Guess it's here.
Here we go. Here we go.
There.
Here we go. We're live.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Independent Producers Live Showcase. This is, we're certainly got thinking about the caravan coming up to the border of the United States tonight, and it's a big part of what we're talking about tonight. So, by the way, I don't want to forget again, my co-host, Broussard. I'm Richard Carpenter, and we're waiting for a call-in for Frosty Wooldridge, who is a total activist on this. Now, I want to read this conversation here.
Sure.
This Frosty said, a friend of mine, Gary Goebel, got into a conversation with an open borders lady. She said, there should be open borders. And he says, oh, I said, why is that? The lady said, people should be free to go as they please and come to this country as they please. And he said, really? Tell me, why do so many Mexicans want to come to the United States? And she said, for a better economic future and a better place to live. And the man said, you mean a better place here than Mexico? And she said, duh, of course. Okay, I said, now tell me, why is that? She was a little surprised, and for a second she said, well, they have bad economy, no jobs, violence, and full of slums. And he said, why is that? And she said, I don't know. And he said, when you do, come and talk to me about open borders. So, yeah, that's part of the thing. That's what it's all about. Now, I'm wondering what's going to happen down there. Is Trump going to stop them from coming in, or just, that's a lot of people.
Well, I think, think about it now. The elections are over. The Democrats basically picked up the House. They got that whole responsibility of the social end. They got that whole responsibility. And so the name of the game is that there's an election coming up 2 years from now for president, okay?
Yeah.
So in all due respect, the campaign of the Democrats was saying to the Republican Party and to the people that we didn't know what we were doing with this whole issue of all these folks that are coming here. We didn't have any solution to the issue.
Okay.
So to me, it's their job now. It's the Democratic
House
Party.
of Representatives.
The House of Representatives have to come up with a solution. And in fact, I think that the people as a whole are tired of the whole issue of this propaganda back and forth routine between Republican and Democrat, and always using the president, if you will, as the goat, if you will. Got me?
Okay.
So as a result of that, this back and forth thing between the president and i.e. the Democrats primarily, but no one talks about the solution. No one talks about the solution. And so my thing is that what should happen, like you said, the House of Representatives, they got the majority, okay? So rather than playing games in regards to, again, going over the Russian situation again and this, that, and the other, and this, that, and the other, personality things and this to the seat, talk to the concerns and the issues that we're involved in right now. See, so at the end of the day, 2 years from today, in all due respect, if they've got some very bona fide solutions, fine. Fine. As long as
Frosty's on the phone.
As long as there's solutions for the people across the board, you know what I mean? So anyway, we can talk a little bit more about that. But.
Right. Frosty, are you there? Well, sounds like something's happening.
Okay, is
Hello?
he there? No, we don't have him here yet. We don't have him yet. Okay, good. Well, he'll get back. Let's just keep talking about the other aspect of it. But my point is, like I said, I think the American people now are saying, okay, there's an election coming up in 2 years. We don't need this same situation again. We've gone through 2 years of the same old deal. And really, it hasn't benefited us at all. While we're fighting among one another, we got other entities that are basically coming in and totally disrupting our way of life.
That's right.
I mean, it's just totally, it's a fact. And you know, we've got rules and guidelines, if you will, in order for us to maintain these United States. If we didn't have those rules and guidelines, we wouldn't be the USA. We got over 100 different dialects and in cultures.
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right. Languages.
Exactly. That's why we have one flag. It's called the American flag.
That's right.
You know, and everybody identifies with a flag from whence they came. But the bottom line is that the rules and the guidelines for getting here, they said, okay, fine. This is how you relate to your flag.
When you
this
get
is how you
here.
when you get here. This is what's going to be expected of you when you get here. It's the respect of this. It's one man, one vote, or whatever it is along that line. But my point is that they've got guidelines. And right now, those guidelines are threatened.
That's right.
They're just breaking down. What happens when all of a sudden the population who are here have to react? When you hear things like, for instance, well, we got people here that the reason why one of the justifications a lot of times that the Democrats use it, well, there's a lot of jobs that Americans don't want to do. Give me a break. Now that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's an insult. That's an insult.
I got one on that. When they say we want to have a better life,
yeah.
What you really are saying is you want to come and take a job away from somebody that needs that job because they were doing just fine and had a family. You want to come in and take that job away. That's what I see when you say we want to come in and
because
life.
we already had some issues with reference to our education system. We took on-the-job training out of our graduation system in our high school.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? We took that out. We took that whole business of blue-collar jobs, got me? With shops and things of that nature. Vocational education. We had it at one point. In fact, in the state of Oregon, we used to have that. Then they took it out, and they went this big push about making everybody white-collar.
Okay.
At the top, if you will. You got me?
Okay.
But not realizing that the people who basically came up with this idea don't understand. It's not about, excuse the French, it's not about a whole bunch of chiefs and a few Indians. I'm just using it. But my point is that the bulk of the workforce in our society are not white collar. They're blue collar.
That's right.
That's a fact.
Okay.
And the other idea is that they're saying, well, technology is going to take a bunch of folks out. Wait a minute. Give us a break here. Maybe there's some technology stuff you don't want to implement just to keep people working.
There's a lot of other things
right.
to be done.
Everybody can't be making $100,000 or $200,000 a year. That's a fact. You got
Right.
it? But right now, there's this mindset, and in all due respect, employers are using it. A lot of employers are using it, and basically saying, okay, fine. No, you don't want to work here. You got me? Even though it's $20,000 an hour. I don't have to hire you anymore because I can get this guy over here who's illegal.
Yeah.
For $15 or $10 or $5 an hour. Okay?
Right.
And that's what's happening right now. And I can say that because I used to be in the construction arena and pushing voc ed and this, that, and the other. And right up front with it, black Americans were displaced big time. They were displaced big time in those construction jobs. And they were just a startup kind of a deal. I can remember pushing, i.e., for the labor force, you know, as far as laborers, as far as the unions, you know, with the different classifications. You got electricals, you got the various trades, okay? And the entry level for a person who wants to get into that arena would be the labor the designee aspect of it. But you can get in there, you know, openly, if you will, and you can attain a retirement, a good retirement, if you will. Okay. And the other thing about that piece, if a person got in trouble with the criminal justice system aspect of it, they would be accepted. And in other trade aspect of it, they wouldn't because of their offense. So the idea was to start working on that. The idea is that what can we do to cut down, if you will, the incarceration, right? And the unemployment piece. We were working on that at that point in time. What could we do about that? And so as a result of that, we ended up with this other entity that's coming in, and we threw them off. And these were all Americans. These are all Americans, and so you know, it's a lot but people don't talk about that. There's just this big argument, there's this fight. Well, Trump did it. We don't like him. Well, he did this. We got the sex thing. We got this. We got this. I'm interested in one thing.
I'm on the phone now.
How do I get a check? How do I feed my family? Yeah. How do I feed my family?
Okay, are you there?
Nope.
Frosty Wooldridge right here.
Hi, Frosty. Welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Now, one thing I did do is I read that conversation that was on the first of your one of your letters.
Okay.
So that's the only thing. We're ready for whatever comes to mind.
Well, I would like each and every American citizen listening tonight understand the gravity of what's happening to America.
Yes.
Okay.
And tomorrow you may read on CapitolHillOutsider.com and or NewsWithViews.com a piece that I've written called the Caravan Onslaught of America's Borders, colon, 1,000 cuts to bleed America to death. And what I'd like most Americans to understand is that we are under siege, both legally and illegally, from an endless line of immigrants that are pouring into this country faster than anyone really understands. And virtually all of Americans, the great vast majority of Americans, do not comprehend what the end result's going to be. And so what I try to do is tell you that what's happening to us is that we're importing 1.2 million legal immigrants every year from 196 different countries.
Jeez.
And the consequence of that is that there are going to be 100 million of them added within the next 30 years from all over the world, and they're bringing with them
You need to sound up a little
196
bit.
different worldviews, 196 different cultures, 196 different languages,
Just what
and
you were
certainly
saying.
196 different religions, and some of these religions are extraordinarily incompatible with Western thought, Western action, and Western rights of women.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is creating a morass of a multicultural, a diversity nightmare for future generations, on top of the fact that we will have a total of 140 million more people added to this country by 2050. And let me just backtrack on that. In 2006, we hit 300 million. And that happened within 40 years from the 1965 Immigration Reform Act. And we went from 193 million people to 300 million people in just about 45 years. Well, now we're going to add 140 million more people in just about 35 years. And we're already 30 million into it because we're at 330 million, and that's just the ones we know we have here that are legal. And the new Yale research study just came out last month that really corrected the former media information of only 11 million illegal aliens in America. There are now 22 to 25 million, as documented in the Yale research project. So we could have even more than anyone understands beyond the 440 million. So we're again on course. We know we've got 330 million, and we're headed for 440 million people. Now, one of the consequences that most people don't understand is the sociological consequences. When you take a single culture like that of the United States, where everybody speaks English, everybody thinks in a very similar direction, they're also extremely educated because of high school and because of college and because of vocational tech jobs and because this society needs intelligent people to operate. And what's happening is we are importing all of these third world people that simply don't have the intellectual horsepower to become computer programmers. They can't even figure out how to do electrics. They certainly can't do plumbing. And so we don't have enough redundant jobs for all of these people because automation is taking over. So what we're going to have is a lot of people from around the world that lack any kind of education to operate in a first world country. And of course, we right now have 44 million people on food stamps. Those numbers will go up. The other thing is the parallel societies that are being created. If you look at Detroit, Michigan, which I just visited this year, certainly Minneapolis, Minnesota, if you look into California, you look into Miami, Florida, you're seeing parallel societies, and the Muslim immigrants coming into this country are not assimilating. They're not speaking English, or they speak English, but they are literally taking over and speaking Arabic in their own cities, in their own enclaves, like Detroit, Michigan, like Minneapolis. And so you now have these parallel societies. And so that is one of the other aspects that we're creating these parallel societies. The Mexicans that are now down in Texas and certainly in Arizona and on Southern California are literally speaking only Spanish, and they absolutely have taken over the school systems, and we're literally allowing Spanish to be the main language, teaching them. And so we will start to have more and more different ways to look at the world. In other words, language creates a worldview. And when you have so many of these different worldviews and these different languages that have nothing in common with each other, there's no translation. So you then have these enclaves, and that's another consequence of this. So we're on course to create such a sociological pileup, if you will, on top of the fact that right now in this country, the three big aspects are water, certainly energy, and then, of course, resources. Well, if you understand and do some checking, you'll find that 7 states are facing water shortages right now in the United States, and California leads that off. But also a place like Florida, but also Texas and New Mexico and even Georgia. There's 7 states that are in water shortage crises, and it's going to get worse. I want everyone to understand, what does another 140 million people mean to this country? Well, to put it really clearly, that means a doubling of the population of our 35 most populated cities. So New York City will jump from 8.3 million to 16.6 million. Chicago, somewhere around 4 million, will go to 8 million. A state like Florida right now is on course to jump from 18 million to 36 million. In other words, doubling its population. And in fact, Los Angeles will go from 11 million to 22 million. And the state of California is growing at such a rate of speed of 1,655 people net gain every day, 24/7. 98% of that is because of legal and illegal immigration and their childbirths, that they will add 20 million more people. Now, for those of you who have heard me before, I've traveled all over the world on a bicycle in the last 45 years. I've crossed 6 continents now, and I've seen cultures. I've seen overpopulation in China, India, Bangladesh, Mexico, South America. I've seen the largest cities in the world that are polluting the skies and burning up all of the energy. And the third thing about the fact that we're burning up all the energy is that this is really a sobering reality. We burn 94 million barrels of oil every day around the planet. And that number is going to double because by 2030, the Chinese, and they're adding 27 million new cars every year, net gain. According to James Howard Kunstler in the Long Emergency, he tabulated all of this.
Frosty?
China, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that people knew that you are an eyewitness to all this information.
Like he said.
You've seen it in person, and it becomes
That's correct.
facts.
I have ridden my bicycle across 6 continents through literally 100 countries to see this firsthand. I've been all over Japan. I've certainly been all over Europe. I've traveled all over Australia. I've traveled all over Asia. I've traveled all throughout South America and Mexico, and so I have seen all of this firsthand. I've seen the consequences, and so that's why I raise my voice, because I do not want my country and your country, the United States of America, and our kids to be essentially bequeathed, or they have to inherit the same kinds of consequences that I've seen worldwide in my bicycle travels. Of course, I've written 2 books on overpopulation. One's called Immigration's Unarmed Invasion, Deadly Consequences. 15 years ago, and I'm astounded at how fast everything is coming true in that book. It's The 8 Ways to Destroy America. And then there is, my latest one was America on the Brink, the next added 100 million Americans. Both are on Amazon. And my third book, which will come out in March of next year, 2019, is called America's Overpopulation Predicament, Blindsiding Future Generations. If we don't stop this thing, and if we don't change course, our kids are going to be swimming in a human soup, if you will, of another 140 million more people. And the crisis of this, Richard, and everyone listening, is the fact that the third world adds 80 million new babies net gain every year. I want you to really understand that. They add 80 million more babies net gain every year. And these babies are starving. They're malnutritioned. They don't have homes. They don't have schools. They can't be educated, and they are starving. They are poor. And the United Nations just did a piece on refugees around the world. There are 68 million refugees looking for a new place to land so they can have a better life. And of course, we've got 14,000 of them coming up, or at least somewhere between 7,000 and 14,000 coming up from Honduras and El Salvador right now.
They're here already.
The UN said within another decade there will be 100 million refugees in the world, and they are literally coming into first world countries. And so I want you to really understand the implications and the ramifications of what our society and our civilization faces.
But Frosty, in all due respect, what happened to the leadership? Don't they understand this? I mean, the people who are making those decisions to allow these folks to come in that way, we see them on CNN and Fox every day.
They don't talk about it.
Yeah, well, and as a matter of fact, what you're seeing is not journalism. You're seeing journalists who are actually activists. You're seeing politicians like Nancy Pelosi or Charles Schumer or Maxine Waters or Hank Hudson from Georgia or Sheila Jackson or really Michael Bennett from Colorado. You're seeing our leaders completely turning a blind eye to the numbers, to the facts. And of course, what did I do in my life? I was a math and science teacher. And, of course, that allowed me 3 months every year to bicycle around the world. So I really had a chance to see everything up close and personal. And so when you ask that question, what's happening is it's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, it means intellectual denial of reality.
Oh, yeah.
I have tried to get on 60 Minutes for the last 20 years. I've tried to interview on NPR. I've tried to interview with Terry Gross, Steve Inskeep, with Robert Siegel. I've tried to interview on Meet the Press, and I've tried to interview on Face the Nation, and my credentials are impeccable. And yet they don't want to touch it. I've tried to get on PBS, and they will not touch this. So what you have are leaders, 535 so-called elected officials in Washington, D.C., that essentially, in fact, I will give you an example. Mark Twain, back in 1860, called it silent assertion. It's called the big lie. And when slavery was going on, everybody in the North would sit there and say it's a terrible thing, but nobody would do anything about it. And so it just boiled over and finally ended up in the Civil War. Well, the same silent assertion's going on today. Silent assertion, A-S-S-E-R-T-I-O-N. This silent assertion is, again, denying what's really going on. So I'm going to give you some examples. Right now, the Catholic charities, the Lutheran charities, the Muslim charities, the Jewish charities are encouraging refugees, and they're equipping them and planting them in thousands of cities across America annually on your tax dollars. And, of course, Congress aids and abets them. There's an average of 300,000 pregnant women from all over the world who violate America's borders, and they birth their anchor babies. And unfortunately, you pay for those anchor babies, and you pay billions of dollars, and in fact trillions over the decades, and Congress does nothing to stop them. Right now, Congress mandates a 50,000 diversity visas annually to give the golden ticket, of what it's called, to third world poor people to arrive in America with an apartment, food stamps, automobile, and cash for as long as they choose, all on your taxpayer dollar. And unfortunately, to sober you as to the congressional boondoggles that this is, there are 14 million people in third world countries signed up for the golden ticket, the diversity ticket to America. So here's another one that would give you a pause. If given a free ticket to America, it has been calculated that 160 million people would move to America next week if they had a plane flight ticket and they had a visa to come to America. They would do that. That was told by the United Nations. And obviously there's so many, there's 12 million humans starved to death around the world every year as it is. So yeah, they want to leave. But here is the crisis. And I really take this in, every person listening tonight. I did a piece, it's a little booklet called The Deadliest Birth Rate for All Humanity. Right now, Africa has 1 billion people. By 2050, at the current birth rates, it will have 2 billion people. And by the end of the century, the United Nations projects Africa to have 4 billion, B as in boy, billion people. So if you think all of these Africans that are fleeing Africa right now and going into America, certainly immigrating into Canada and immigrating into Europe, if you think the line's going to end, it's not going to end, so nothing is going to solve what's happening there. The second deadliest birth rate is India. India has 1.25 billion people. It is now on course to hit 1.55 billion. In other words, well over another 300 million more people within 30 years. Right. And of course, Indians are now chain migrating into the United States by the hundreds of thousands. And we're allowing it to happen, and yet India is doing nothing to stop its birth rates. And then China, which is also bringing Chinese immigrants into the United States by the tens of thousands, they have 1.4 billion people, and they are slated to hit 1.5 billion because they grow about 10 million a year net gain, even with a one-child, per woman policy. So what I'm sharing with you tonight on this broadcast is that no one is solving their own problems. They're simply adding to them, and the birth rates, again, are adding 80 million net gain every year, and every 12 years, the human race adds another billion people, and we're at 7.6 billion right now. And by 2050, which is only 32 years from here, we will easily exceed 10 billion human beings on the planet. And as you said, why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't the news saying we got to change course? We need to literally stop all immigration into the United States, or at least reduce it to less than 100,000 per year. And the answer is this. There are big people in places like New York and the big power positions that want to sell more homes, sell more cars, sell more textiles, and so every immigrant that comes into the United States is another piece of money to give them their Learjet, give them their Mercedes, or give them their fantastic, castle in the mountains. They're not thinking about the future. They're not thinking about lowered standard of living, certainly lowered quality of life, and they don't care. For those of you who appreciate it, it's called a Faustian bargain. And the Faustian bargain means that they are selling their economic soul for the riches of the moment to pay a very severe price on down the line. And that's why this is all going on. There's no question that we've We've got all of these illegal aliens pouring into this country at 500,000 per year. You would think that the anchor baby fraud would be changed and stopped immediately and averted by simply changing the law and amending the 14th Amendment, but they won't do that, and they haven't in 30 years. So that's going to continue. You then have, of course, the illegals, and they're working at all these jobs, 22 to 25 million of them, and no one's arresting the employers of the illegals. Right. And those illegals are making, all the employers are making all this money. Yep. Well, we are paying for the children to be educated K through 12. We're paying for breakfasts and lunches. We're paying for ESL courses, which cost $2,000 per year per child. So that's going on.
And medical. Don't forget medical, Frosty.
The medical costs. For those of you who appreciate, illegal immigrants cost the American taxpayer $296 billion, B as in boy, $1 billion a year across 15 federal agencies. And of course, that means they get all free medical care, certainly postnatal, birth. The births of all these 300,000, anchor babies or jackpot babies, as they're called, and you and I are paying for that. But here's the consequence. We've got 11,000 homeless in San Francisco. How do I know? Because I was there this summer as I bicycled the West Coast from Canada to Mexico. We've got 10,000 homeless in my city of Denver. We've got 12,500 homeless in Seattle, Washington. You can look these numbers up. I just did the research for this article today that will be at newswithviews.com tomorrow. We got 90,000 homeless living in tent cities in Los Angeles. And in August of 2018, New York City reported 63,025 homeless people, including 15,400 homeless families, with 22,900 homeless children sleeping each night in the New York municipal streets, shelter systems, and whatever. And we're not taking care of these people, and yet we're allowing 1,500 illegal aliens to cross into our country every night. That's how many slip by, and that is documented by Dr. Stephen Camarata, whom I've worked with for 20 years at the Center for Immigration Studies. So you see, what's going on is that this country is facing an unbelievable onslaught. And what it means is that Americans have stagnant wages because they're being undercut. Essentially, certainly African Americans are being undercut, and our taxes are being undercut because they're not being paid. The forgeries of visas, the forgeries of identification, the forgeries of Social Security. Yep. You've got galloping housing prices that are just being blitzed. Yep. You've got schools that are malfunctioning because here in Colorado we have 173 different languages. 173 different languages. Does anybody think that a kid that speaks English is going to get education in any city in America? As a matter of fact, there are over 800 languages being spoken every day in New York City because almost 40% of New York City is foreign-born. And then you're talking about jammed highways. I don't know what it is in your city, but I can tell you Los Angeles is a driving nightmare. Denver, Colorado is a driving nightmare. Chicago, Illinois, Atlanta, Georgia, Miami, Florida, New York City, certainly San Francisco, Dallas, Fort Worth, and they're only going to get worse. And then you're looking at the welfare burden and all of these people living on food stamps and Section 8 housing. But as things get worse, look at the inter-ethnic strife. Look at the racial conflict in our country. Look at all the black-on-black killing going on in Chicago right now. Why is that going on? Because American black men, the African Americans, can't get a job because there are the highest concentration of illegal aliens is in Chicago. Some people think it's somewhere between 500,000 and at least 1 million illegal aliens in the Chicago arena. And so everybody's getting cheap labor, and these illegals are making all this money. Oh, and by the way, they send cash transfers to the tune of $120 billion a year, going out to about $28 billion goes into Mexico, but it keeps getting spread out across the planet. So what you're seeing from all this information, that there's no way that we're going to survive this thing because the numbers are too great. The sociological chaos, the linguistic chaos, and the cultural chaos and the different worldviews are simply going to pull this country apart. Does this sound... Do you see the certitude in my voice? Do you see that I've got a picture for everyone that what's happening to America?
But Frosty, think about it, Frosty. When all those points that you were making, the entire leadership out there knows this kind of stuff. The bottom line is it doesn't affect them now. And any time, if you will, it affects them economically as far as dollars, they give themselves a raise. Okay?
Yep, you're right.
You see what I'm saying?
You're right.
As far as playing the market, they got access to the market there 24/7. I mean, that's
and as a matter of fact, there's insider trading in the United States Congress because they know which of those all those big bills are going through. They know what military is going to get the big financial gains, so they buy stocks in the companies that they know are going to profit by those bills going through the Congress.
And as you say, I mean, it can't go on forever, if you will. So the bottom line is that when that falls, when they can't do it, we have no country anymore.
That's right.
That's exactly correct. And what I see happening...
Yeah, and we won't be able to adjust.
That's right. Every African American, every Caucasian American, every Hispanic American in this country that are American citizens are going to see their lives degraded. They're going to see their jobs degraded, and you're going to see the number. And as our numbers go up, as we add another 140 million people to this country, all the quality of life in our cities, whether it's air pollution, whether it's gridlock traffic, whether it's people who can't cope with this kind of packing, the illiteracy rates are going to rise because so many in the inner cities just don't finish even the 8th grade. And so we're going to see consequences because all of these American citizens that are struggling are not good. They're falling through the cracks. Obviously, 90,000 homeless in Los Angeles are not a very good sign of the future. And again, as I said, when you've got all this automation coming in, there's no way we can work all of these immigrants in jobs and keep them afloat and then keep our own citizens afloat. So everyone is going to have consequences from this national tragedy of mass immigration that literally no one at the top levels is trying to stop.
Well, think about this, Frosty. You think about it. I mean, again, it's gotten political, right? You know, in all due respect, I'm conservative, and I can remember when politically we went on and gave citizenship to Mexicans, right? Illegals, remember?
1986.
That's right, and that was, in all due respect, that was the Reagan administration and the Bush administration, right?
That's correct.
See what I'm saying? And so my point is that now here we are today. Now here we created that. The politics of it created that. And that was just the Republicans, but that's Republicans and Democrats, because they had to sign off on this deal to make that happen, right? You got me? Then we got into things like English as a second language with all those cultures. That's how we got there, where we are today.
$2,000 a year, doesn't it, to teach?
That's right. See, now
when Frosty, don't speak English.
And I really appreciate the kinds of things that you're sharing with us today, because the public needs to know that. The public needs to know that. If you don't have access to the dollars today, you're just out there in the streets, and right up front with you, they don't look like, excuse the French, minorities. They're Americans to me across the board. Now we have been slow on assimilation, and i.e. that's how the race thing came to the table. We've been slow on this. We should have gotten that thing solved when Lincoln was president, but guess what? We shot him. Got me? And we've been playing around with that thing, politics, for years and years and years. And in all due respect, that's why it's been so slow, because we've allowed those same entities that we're calling about this divide thing to be a part of the other entity that does the same deal. I'm talking about black folks and Mexicans and other folks of different class, but they're all Americans, but they're thinking out about themselves. That small few. That's why I said we got to go on and solve and push forward this assimilation deal, because if we don't do that, trust me, all that you're doing, going all over the country, we all see it. But the people with the money say, well, gee whiz, I got a plane, I can go anywhere I want to, I can do. They don't realize they're going to be impacted more than anything else.
Yeah.
If you look like you've got some money in the very near future, what do you think? Poor folks are not robbing poor people today. They're going to the well-to-do folks and taking.
Okay.
Right.
Frosty.
Anyway, I'm
Frosty,
sorry.
I wanted to. I didn't want to miss this thing about Trump's visit over to Europe. Merkel, Macron, Trudeau, and May trying to deal with Trump, and mostly their countries. And this, one of the things that I read that you sent me about Ireland, totally
Correct.
burdened by women coming from Africa to have their babies born there, and
Right.
all the expense is just about killing them.
That's correct. As a matter of fact, Ireland is the last country in Europe to stop anchor babies because it was absolutely breaking them.
Yeah.
But also Ireland, so that was outlawed 5 years ago, and they stopped all the anchor babies from having instant citizenship. But one of the crises facing Ireland is that they've been importing Nigerians from Africa and from Morocco, and these people have absolutely no ability to work in a first world country, so they're now taking over the cities and creating ghettos where they live on the welfare of the Irish people and simply do not participate in Ireland and are not assimilating and not learning English and certainly not able to work. And so that's what's happening. But one of the things I found when you saw Merkel and Macron and Trudeau and May all chastising Trump, I've been to Europe 3 times, and I can tell you, if you go into London, England right now, the Muslim immigrants are about 2.5 million in outlying cities, and they've created 2 London Englands. One is where no British go, and that's called the Muslim sector, where they have 130 Sharia courts, 50 Sharia law city councils, and you have these Sharia law thugs going around and enforcing Sharia law. And so the British don't even go there anymore. They're no-go zones. And then you have the British sector, but then you're not even safe in the British sector because all these single Muslim lone wolves are out stabbing people, driving driving cars and killing people. And so, Theresa May, the MP of the United Kingdom, she is out of control. She doesn't have any power to stop this mad race to destroy all of the Great Britain. And the reason Brexit came into being was because the British people are tired of having all of these Muslim immigrants foisted on them because it's destroying their country. Well, Macron, who really made fun of Trump and his nationalism, he's got a country with 55 million people, and that country is less than the size of Oregon, for heaven's sakes, and Oregon feels crowded with 4 million people. And yet Macron is chastising Trump. Well, guess what? The Muslims they have 90 no-go zones in France right now. You don't dare go in there. The police don't go in there. Nobody goes into those ghettos because they are ghettos, and they are Sharia law ghettos, and that's where honor killings are going on by the hundreds. They have female genital mutilation of all their little girls, which is a barbaric practice that should be never allowed in any first world country. It shouldn't be allowed in any country. You have arranged marriages of little girls to 40-year-old men. You have killings of gays because Muslims kill gays. There is no free speech. There is no freedom to dress. There's no freedom of religion. There's certainly no freedom of choice. There in France, in these enclaves of Islamic domination, and you also have Nice, France, where the guy ran over a whole bunch of people. You've got Paris, France, where they blew the place up and killing all the people eating in eateries just a couple of years ago. Then all the people that were in those cartoonists, they went in and shot up the entire cartoonist bureau. So free speech is not allowed in the Islamic world. And yet Macron was chastising Trump for trying to stop it and being proud that America is a nation, a sovereign nation. And yes, nationalism means you're proud of your nation, you're proud of your country, you're proud of your culture, and yet he was being made fun of. Merkel, her country of Germany, at some point is going to have a civil war break out.
Yep.
Because the Muslims, there's 2 million of them now that have been imported into all of Germany, and they're literally trashing the streets, living on welfare, and they're breaking the German system, and the German people are absolutely angry because of the rapes, because of the burglaries, because of the killings. But the same thing's going on in places like where Trudeau of Canada, I can tell you this, I just was in Vancouver last year. I've been to Vancouver over the last 45 years on my trips to Alaska. Vancouver has changed from a Canadian city. It's now a Chinese city. There are more Chinese in Vancouver, and all the signage is in Chinese, all the speaking is in Mandarin, and virtually all of the Canadians, all the white Canadians, and even black Canadians have left Vancouver because the Chinese don't like white people. That's just all there is to it. They simply don't do it. How do I know? I've traveled throughout China, and I saw it firsthand, and I experienced it firsthand. So then you've got Trudeau, who's turning his country into everybody else's country. The English and French are being subverted by Arabic and by 50 different languages from all of these immigrants that are pouring into Canada. And again, let me remind you, the third world is adding 80 million more babies every year, net gain to itself. So there's no end of this massive immigration invasion of first world countries.
Again, Frosty, follow the money, right? Who's making the money?
Yeah, you can follow the money, but at some point in time when these societies start breaking down, when you don't have enough water to water all these people, and you don't have enough food because arable land has been exhausted, and when you don't have the resources, which at some point are running out very rapidly, then all the money in the world and driving a Learjet or certainly driving a Mercedes is not going to do you any good.
That's right.
If you can't drive down through a city, because if anyone really traveled to Sweden right now, you're seeing Sweden in a total breakdown of culture, a total breakdown of rule of law, and a total breakdown of a civil society. That's what's happening to Norway, and they soon will become the first Islamic state, caliphate, if you will, of Europe. And that's been bragged very often by their imams, who are the spiritual leaders, and they are so excited. And of course, their main prime directive is to convert or kill all non-believers, unquote.
Oh, yeah?
That's right. I've known that for a long time.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. And I can't believe what the women just don't have rights.
None.
And they do this other stuff. They cut off your hands.
Oh, yeah.
They do all this it's all part of Sharia law. And I'll tell you, we've got to keep it out of this country.
You know, Frosty, when you make...
It's already in this country. We can't keep it out of this country. It's going on right now. We've had beheadings in our country. I've got 7 examples of beheadings. We've got beheadings in this country in New Jersey. We've got 500,000 cases of female genital mutilation in this country. We have an average of 23 to 27 honor killings every year in this country. That's by the DHS Assistant District Attorney on his report on February 2 of 2018 at the White House press conference. I watched it. I took the notes. That's what we have going on in this country. In fact, we have arranged marriages of little girls to old men. That was $3,000 a year. That was reported by Ann Curry of NBC News.
One of the things I could tell people to go to your computer, White House, and fill in the form saying, do not let any immigrants into the United States. Have them go back to their country and make their country great. That's exactly what they ought to be doing.
Well, as a matter of fact, the Dalai Lama just 2 months ago said that all of these immigrants need to go back to their own countries and they need to build and rebuild their own countries. I don't know if you know the great biologist and social scientist Garrett Hardin. He was in California. He died several years ago. He said, and I'm quoting, "Diversity within a nation destroys unity and leads to civil wars. Immigration, a benefit during the youth of a nation, and can act as a disease in its mature state. Too much internal diversity in a large nation has led to violence and disintegration. We are now in the process of destabilizing America. The magic words of destabilizers are diversity and multiculturalism."
That's right.
If you add to that, and again, all Black Americans, all white Americans, all Hispanic Americans, we're all in this together.
That's right.
And either we all stop it by our actions, and telling all of our 535 representatives there in Washington, D.C., either we tell them to stop this and stop this massive immigration invasion, or we are all going to pay the price. Here is another quote that I think is so worthwhile. It's by Omar Ahmad, and he's the director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. And he said, and I quote, "Islam isn't in America to be equal to any faith, but to become dominant. The Quran should be the highest authority in America, and Islam the only accepted religion on earth," unquote.
Oh.
Hope that puts a chill down your spine.
Well, you made a good point in regards to you hit the three major groups, and you've got cultures in each one of those groups. And I'm saying the blacks, the whites, and the Hispanics. Right? You got me?
Right. And we've had a difficult time just trying to maintain our racial
That's what I'm saying.
calm and our racial harmony here in the United States. We've done a better job than most other countries because we've all been it's actually been a Christian nation, and we've actually had a sense of being American. We all speak English, so the blacks, the browns, and the whites have something to really to have commonality, and we got to pull with each other. The Muslims could care less about American culture. They could care less about Thomas Jefferson and Martin Luther King, because their prime directive is to subvert the Constitution of any host country, and you're watching it happen all over Europe right now, and simply implement the Sharia law, which subjugates everybody back into the 6th century Dark Ages.
Well, assimilation is tough, ain't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it sure is. There's another quote that I think is worthwhile if you're black, white, or brown, you're still an American, and that is this, because we all share the same culture. Any culture that will not defend itself against displacement through mass immigration faces extinction. That includes both time-tested and successful cultures. Embracing diversity results in cultural suicide. America's multicultural path guarantees its destruction via cultural clashes and conflict with Islam, Mexican, and African cultures that diametrically oppose American culture. The more diverse a country, the more destructive and broken down its future. The more people, the more it destroys its quality of life and standard of living. The more it adds immigrants, the more destruction to its environment. The more it imports refugees, the faster America, Canada, Europe, and Australia lose their ability to function, and worse, lose their identities. Exponential growth of any civilization leads ultimately to collapse. You see it now in Africa and India and China today. You will see it in Europe, Canada, Australia, and America in the coming years if Western countries don't stop all forms of immigration, unquote.
Yep.
Wow.
That's the name of the game, my friend. The idea is that we've developed a culture in this country of those three major entities, and then all of a sudden these entities, these three major entities, are breaking down in essence, basically enforcing and creating their own cultures, if you will.
And our culture
is separate groups.
We'll go out and fight for our
but my point is that's the problem. The three are breaking up. They're not realizing what we're doing. And trust me, I'm a black American, and I know the struggles. I understand the history of Lincoln and i.e. of slavery and this. But my point is that through assimilation, you see, We all have that history in each of those three categories. You got me?
Yeah.
But the idea
Right.
is that we've not gotten and assimilated fast enough such that we can say, okay, fine, it was history, but now we've got the American culture. And all three of those entities are together. Now we can't respond to it because the Latino community, if you will, or the Mexican community, the brown community, are basically, they're saying, look, my culture are those folks that are coming down here in Grove.
Yeah.
They're family
right.
members of mine, and this, that, and the other. I want to go back and see what my history is all about. And this, that. Are you getting my drift, Frosty?
And there's
Sure, I certainly do, and I respect your understanding because that's exactly what's going on.
Yes.
Here's another thing that I think every listener should really appreciate. This was by James Walsh. He said it in 1991. He's the former Associate General Counsel of the United States Immigration and Naturalization Service, and now ICE, of course. And I'm quoting, "Immigrants devoted to their own cultures and religions are not influenced by the secular, politically correct facade that dominates academia, news media, entertainment, education, religious, and political thinking today.
That's right.
These immigrants say they claim the right not to assimilate, and the day is coming when the question will be, how can the United States regulate the defiantly unassimilated cultures, religions, and mores of foreign lands? Such immigrants say their traditions trump the U.S. legal system.
Right.
Balkanization of the United States has begun," unquote.
Right.
That should send a chill up your spine.
That's right.
yeah.
Of the three cultures that you mentioned, the black, the brown, you understand what I'm saying? The blacks, the brown, and the whites, right? You got me?
Correct.
But so this is the kind of information that should get out.
Yeah,
This
that's
is the
right.
kind of
I'm
Well,
gonna
information-
try
I
to
should be
get
on
this
60
out.
Minutes with this, but again, you've got so many people up there that do not understand the consequences of exponential growth. When I mention exponential growth, that's the growth of a cancer cell. In other words, it's steady and it keeps growing until it overwhelms the host body, and then it kills it.
Yes.
If we take in this next 140 million
Oh, it's
people,
over. It's over.
we are not going to survive this thing
It's over.
because we simply don't have the food, the energy, the
Right.
resources, the arable land, and we certainly don't have the endurance to tolerate another 100 million immigrants from 196 different countries
Right.
with 196 different worldviews.
And
Frosty,
Yes.
we got about a minute now, and I just want to tell you this has been absolutely
it's been very, very good.
Fabulous.
Very good. Very good.
having you come on, and it's timed so perfect.
Yes.
Because this stupid caravan coming in, trying to come into the United States.
I'll say this on my little quick note. I'll say we've got 2 years to rush some sort of assimilation among those three cultures that you mentioned, if you hear what I'm saying. We got an election coming up in 2 years. We've got to assimilate within that particular period of time. We have to come up with some kind of a solution to the things that you were talking
And I
about.
want to thank our crew,
Right.
especially.
Thank you,
But
Frosty.
again, thank you, Frosty, for calling
Okay,
in.
well, again, for all of those of you who want to do something, certainly join numbersusa.org,
Awesome.
carryingcapacitynetwork.com,
Awesome.
and capsweb.org, capsweb.org. And those two videos, the Immigration Gumballs and Poverty by Roy Beck at numbersusa.org, every American should see that.
I'll check that
and
out.
then Immigration Off the Charts.
Okay.
See both of those two videos, pass them to all your friends.